agreement. Here's our Ed Werder with more.
Speaking to Cowboys sources here today, the first thing is that those involved in negotiations with players approaching free agency, and I'm told they're active with 6 or more players right now, is that the deadline extension is logical. The Cowboys feel they'll have be far more restricted in terms of what they can pay Dak Prescott, Amari Cooper, and others without a collective bargaining agreement. The first priority for Jerry Jones and son Steven is to avoid having to use the franchise and transition tags at all. They want a long-term contract with Prescott and recognize that's going to make him the highest paid player in franchise history. If they fail to reach an agreement with him, then they will use the franchise player tag, costing either $27 or $33 million against the cap. One thing the Cowboys and Prescott have in common, both want Cooper to remain in Dallas, which is something Cooper has described as being his preference as well. If the new CBA is ratified, they'll have to get a deal completed with either Prescott or Cooper to make that a reality. And from what I'm being told, it seems the Cowboys are working hard to reach an agreement with Cooper, and that Cooper and his agent appear motivated at the moment to get something done. That seemed to indicate to me he could be signed before Prescott.
Well, Ed, thank you. Recently, the Cowboys have been able to lock up a couple of their young superstars. In 2019, they were able to sign DeMarcus Lawrence, Zeke Elliott, Jalen Smith, and La'el Collins, all to deals that are at least 5+ years. Now they just have to sign their quarterback, which is not just any old thing on the to-do list. And Rick, as a former NFL GM, you certainly know that. But now with the franchise tag deadline and the other deadlines coming up, free agency starting, what are the conversations and what's going on in the office of Steven and Jerry Jones?
Well, I know we live in a world where we want the answer now, right? But these negotiations, they take time, and they don't operate in a vacuum. And so, I know that there's talk about why is this taking so long to get Dak done. Well, I think when Steven and Jerry Jones, when they look at the roster and they talk about building and moving forward, they've got numbers that are allocated for certain positions for certain players. When you don't make those contracts come in at the value that you've originally thought about. Now they've got to think about, okay, well, we had targeted this amount of money for these free agents, or we've targeted this amount of money for that position. And so you've got to move money around. You've got to figure out how much can I actually give Dak? What position am I willing to sacrifice in free agency that we may not now get, or maybe we've got to go to a second-tier player. So it's not just Dak Prescott and Amari Cooper. It's how did we come out of the season? How do we evaluate our roster, and what needs do we think that we prioritize, that we need to make sure that we address these issues before next season starts, and can we get all that done with the excess amount that we have to pay these two players?
Just as Ed said that he thinks Amari Cooper could re-sign before Dak Prescott. Amari Cooper will re-sign before Dak Prescott. That'll happen. I expect that to be the case. And they will have to use their franchise tag on Dak Prescott because these sides have been talking for months now and have been unable to come up with an agreement. The Cowboys made another offer March 2nd. Again, I think the next real critical spot here is the first week of March when the Cowboys begin their offseason program. That becomes an artificial deadline. Amari Cooper
Once you get Amari Cooper done, the quarterback is to follow, because you're not going to sign your wide receiver and not try to get the quarterback done. It makes no sense, especially what you gave up to get Amari Cooper to help the quarterback, especially on third down.
Dak Prescott certainly a part of their plan. The Pro Football Hall of Fame, by the way, announced today the Cowboys and Steelers will play each other in the Hall of Fame game Thursday, August 6th. Now, we surveyed our NFL player analysts to make educated guesses. That's what we're calling them, educated guesses on where 8 veteran quarterbacks will play next season. It includes 7 unrestricted free agents, headlined, of course, by Tom Brady, plus Andy Dalton, who appears headed out of Cincinnati, with the Bengals likely drafting LSU's Joe Burrow with that top pick. And for starters, every single one of our analysts expect Dak Prescott to stay in Dallas. The question, whether it's on a franchise tag or a long-term deal. In Foxborough, as Patriots Nation, like the rest of us, waits the future of Tom Brady. Mike, let's start with this. What is the atmosphere around this team right now?
Well, Wendy, I can sum it up in 3 words: air of uncertainty. Here we are, 6 days away from when Tom Brady's agents can speak to other teams about contracts, and the Patriots and Brady are no closer to an agreement. So it's created this air of uncertainty throughout the building. And, you think about it from Robert Kraft's perspective, the owner. He's giving Bill Belichick the keys to drive this situation, but he's also on the record, Kraft is, as saying that he hopes and prays that Brady either plays for the Patriots or he retires. And there's two key questions, Wendy, that remain. How far will Bill Belichick go financially, annually, and emotionally to try to keep Tom Brady here? And the second question, how much does Tom Brady still want to be with the Patriots? They're still working through the answers to those questions.
You're right, Mike. It seems the only thing we know for sure is that he will play. He's opting not to retire. At least that's what the understanding is right now. What are Patriots players saying about their quarterback? And I know they still think of him as their quarterback and his situation.
Well, Wendy, I think this story would sum it up. I was speaking with receiver Philip Dorsett the other day, and I said, have you been following Tom Brady's free agent status? And his answer to me was, well, how can you not? Every time I turn on the TV, that's all anyone is talking about. And Dorsett said, look, it's going to be hard to envision Tom in any other uniform, but at the same time, he's going to look out for his best interests. And then you talk to other free agents in Philip Dorsett's situation, like Kyle Van Noy and Ted Karras, and they say, we sort of feel like maybe we're on hold a little bit because we know the Patriots are dealing with Tom Brady first and foremost.
That makes a lot of sense, Mike. Thank you. And whether Tom Brady is plan A for Bill Belichick or not, there is always a plan B. What could that look like?
Well, I don't think that they're dealing with Tom Brady first. I think what they're dealing with first right now is the CBA first. And to try to get clarity there to know the rules that they're operating under so they then can go sit down and talk with Tom Brady and figure out a contract if both sides are interested or not, and sit down and talk to Philip Dorsett and the rest of the free agents and figure out what they're doing. So that's the first thing that they have to get done is know the rules that they're playing under. Beyond that, their plan, if they lose Tom Brady, I don't know that they have one right now, to be perfectly frank, because I still think people are having a hard time processing the idea that Tom could potentially leave New England. It's not a certainty he will. It's certainly possible at this point in time. Maybe he stays. If he does leave, my sense would be that the Patriots then would convene and figure out what they want to do. And I think we've seen New England, if we judge by history in their past, they don't proactively react to these things and are forced into decisions that are rushed and desperate. They don't do that. So if Tom Brady were down, they'd see which free agent quarterbacks are out there at that point in time, and then they take their time. And there'd be one sitting there at the end, being that this is the first year that there's ever been a greater supply of quarterbacks than a demand for quarterbacks. Somebody's going to be left without a chair. Somebody may draw New England's interest. And they've got Jarrett Stidham on the roster, a rookie they liked from last year. I bet they drafted another one this year. I bet they signed a free agent that didn't get the deal he's looking for. And there's your three guys, none of which cost a lot of money. And then they could take a look at it and figure out what they want to do from there.
They certainly have a plan B. We just don't know what it is. Bill Belichick is not going to go into a season free agency, the draft, without having a plan B. Much like Adam's saying, it's a bunch. It's, do we trade for an Andy Dalton? Do we take a look at Teddy Bridgewater if he's still on the board once Tom makes a decision? Do we look at Jameis Winston? There's so many different things and variables there. I think what has to happen, though, is they first have to have a real conversation, whether it's in Foxborough or whether it's at Tom's home, sit down, figure out where they want to go, what type of players they want to surround him with to get him comfortable in the situation again. But in the end, I still believe that he's going back to New England because New England is not asking him to leave, much like Indianapolis did with Peyton Manning or some of these other quarterbacks, Brett Favre.
That was a different situation.
Different situations as a whole.
With Peyton in Indianapolis. But, Rick, let me ask you this. If you're a GM, in terms of the Patriots, I mean, there's a lot of intangibles. This is certainly the greatest player in that franchise's history, likely, of all time. I mean, you have to manage all kind of things if you consider his departure imminent. How do you do that?
Well, I think you do it very much like they're talking about. I do believe that there's a plan. We don't know what that plan is. I do think that even as a part of this process, before it's all decided, I think that there will be those conversations where Bill and Tom will sit down and they will talk about, even I think it goes even as far as, past next week when Tom has his opportunity to talk to other teams, to see what his market value looks like, to see what those other opportunities look like. I think when those crystallize and all of a sudden this is a real life opportunity. And so now Tom really has to sit with this decision of, do I leave a place that I've been in the comfortable place that I am for 20 years to go for this unknown? And then New England gets to say, okay, well, here's what we can do in order to keep you. I think those conversations are going to happen as well.
A lot going on. We talk about next week. It's going to be a zoo.
How many phones you got, Adam?
I know. He's going to need about 10 more.
Something different.
Yeah, okay.
Batteries?
Charge up. Up next, what is the latest on the Cowboys' new offer to their quarterback?